The sky had turned the color of tarnished silver when Colt Waverly crested the last ridge before home. The clouds hung low, bruised and swollen with rain, and the air smelled like earth and memory. He hadn't been back to the Waverly Ranch in 6 long years, not since he'd traded his father's rough land for oil fields and high-stakes cattle deals farther west. They called him a millionaire cowboy now, a man who had everything. But as his horse trotted down the muddy road toward the familiar split-rail fence, all that wealth suddenly felt hollow. The porch came into view through the curtain of rain. The board sagged a little more than he remembered, and one shutter hung loose, tapping against the siding in the wind. A single light glowed from the kitchen window, soft, steady, alive. That stopped him. His parents shouldn't have been burning a lamp this late, not with their health failing and the price of oil for lamps what it was. Maybe a ranch hand had stopped by, though Colt couldn't imagine who still lingered in this half-forgotten stretch of prairie. He swung down from his horse, boots sinking into the thick mud. The wind tugged at his hat, and lightning rippled across the horizon as he climbed the steps. The door creaked open at his touch, and warmth rushed out to meet him. Warmth and the smell of something cooking. Inside, the house looked both exactly the same and heartbreakingly changed. The same table where his mother used to knead bread, the same iron stove where his father brewed his bitter coffee. But everything was worn thinner now. The quilts frayed, the chairs lighter, the walls more hollow. Then he saw her. A woman stood at the stove, ladle in hand, stirring a pot of stew. Her hair was pulled up loosely, the firelight catching in the stray wisps that framed her face. She was humming, so softly he almost didn't recognize the tune, something his mother used to hum when he was a boy. When she turned and saw him standing in the doorway, she froze. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the bubbling stew. "You must be Colt," she said quietly, her voice low but steady. "They said you might come home one day." Colt took a slow step forward, rain still dripping from his coat. "Who are you?" "My name's Clara." She set the ladle down and wiped her hands on her apron. "I live just past the river near the old cottonwoods. Your parents, they helped me when my husband passed. I come by to help them now. Cook, clean, keep the place up. They shouldn't be alone out here." From the corner of the room came a trembling voice, one Colt would have known anywhere. "Colt? Colt? That you, boy?" His throat tightened as he turned. His father sat in the rocker by the fire, his hands gnarled around a whittling knife. His mother was beside him, her silver hair loose, her smile both weary and radiant. Colt went to his knees beside them before he even knew what he was doing. "It's me, Ma. It's me." His mother's fingers, thin and trembling, cupped his cheek. "You came home?" she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I told your pa you would." His father's eyes, clouded but still sharp, flicked toward him. "You took your time." Colt laughed softly, the sound half a sob. "Guess I did." They talked long into the evening. Clara moved quietly in the background, setting bowls of stew on the table, refilling his mother's tea, mending a torn blanket by the fire. She never interrupted, never asked questions. Yet every gesture carried a quiet strength that filled the house with something warm and steady, something Colt hadn't realized had been missing from his life. When the meal was done, and his parents had drifted to sleep in their chairs, Colt went outside. The rain had stopped, leaving the world hushed beneath a sky scattered with stars. The smell of wet soil filled the air, clean and grounding. He leaned on the porch rail, staring out at the fields that had once been his whole world. The grass shimmered in the moonlight, and in that silence, he felt every year he'd been gone settle heavy on his chest. He didn't hear Clara step outside until she spoke. "They've missed you, you know." He turned slightly. She stood in the doorway, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders, her face half lit by the warm glow inside. I can see that, he said quietly. I just didn't realize how much until now. They talk about you every day, she continued softly. About the horses you broke, the fences you built, how you used to race the wind down by the creek. They never stopped believing you'd come back. He looked at her then. Really looked. The calm in her eyes, the strength behind her gentleness. You've done a lot for them, he said. More than I ever did. I just do what anyone would, she replied, though there was something almost sad in the way she said it. He shook his head. No, most folks wouldn't. Not out here. Not for people who can't pay. She gave a faint smile. Not everything's about pay, Mr. Waverly. That silenced him. The prairie wind whispered through the morning came soft, and gold over the Waverly Ranch, the sun stretching through thin curtains and spilling across the kitchen floorboards. Colt sat at the table, coffee cooling untouched in his hands, listening to the familiar creak of the old house as it woke. It had been a long night. The weight of returning home still pressed heavy on him, but something about the sound of Clara, humming as she moved around the stove, settled his restlessness like a balm. She was already there when he came down. Apron tied, sleeves rolled up, her dark hair braided neatly down her back. She moved with quiet assurance, checking the bread dough she'd left to rise and refilling the kettle. His parents still slept, the old couple too frail now to rise before the sun, so the morning belonged to them alone. Colt cleared his throat softly. You start early. She glanced up, smiling faintly. The house wakes with the dawn, always has. I imagine it's the same for you. He nodded, looking out the window where mist still hung over the fields. Used to be. Lately I sleep later. Maybe I got too comfortable in city beds. She poured him a fresh cup and set it down without asking. Comfort's a funny thing, she said gently. It can dull the parts of us that used to feel alive. Her words lingered. Colt studied her as she kneaded the dough with practiced hands, the muscles in her forearms flexing with each press. She wasn't like the women he'd met at banquets and parties in Abilene, all lace and perfume and polished smiles. Clara was real, grounded. There was something about her presence that filled the room with quiet steadiness. How long have you been helping them? He asked. 2 years now, she said without looking up. Your mother found me in town after my husband died. I was trying to trade my wedding ring for flour. He blinked. She told me she'd found an angel who could cook. Clara smiled faintly. She found a woman with nothing left to lose. I suppose that's close enough. Colt leaned back in his chair, watching her. You've done more than cook. I saw how they look at you. Like your family. She hesitated, then met his gaze. Maybe that's what we've all been for each other. Family isn't always what you're born into. Before he could reply, his mother's frail voice drifted down the stairs. Clara, is that coffee I smell? Clara turned, voice bright. It is, ma'am, and biscuits in the oven. Colt watched as she helped his mother to the table, her movements tender and practiced. His father followed, shuffling stiffly, muttering that he didn't need help, though Clara steadied his elbow just the same. Within minutes, the small kitchen filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of laughter, something he hadn't heard in that house in a long time. When breakfast was done, Clara began clearing the table, but Colt stopped her. You've done enough, he said. Let me. She blinked, surprised. You? Wash dishes? He chuckled softly. Don't sound so doubtful. I remember which end of the dishcloth's which. His father barked a laugh from his chair. About time you did some work around here, boy. Even his mother was smiling, the lines around her eyes softening. Clara gave a playful nod and handed him the dish rag. All right then, Mr. Waverly, let's see what kind of millionaire you really are. It was a small thing, washing dishes side by side, but it felt strangely intimate. The morning light slanted through the window, catching the steam that rose from the basin. Their shoulders brushed once, twice, and each time he found himself glancing at her profile, the curve of her cheek, the faint dimple that appeared when she smiled. He wanted to ask her more, about her husband, her life before all this, but something told him not to press. She had the look of a woman who'd rebuilt herself from ashes, and he wasn't sure he had the right to stir those embers. Later, that afternoon, the rain returned, sweeping across the plains in long gray sheets. His parents dozed in their chairs by the fire while Clara mended shirts in the lamplight. Colt sat nearby, restless again. He hadn't planned to stay another night, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. He finally spoke, voice low. "Clara, if I paid off whatever debts you've got, would you let me help you? I could see to it you had land of your own, somewhere better than this." Her needle paused mid-stitch. For a long time, she didn't answer. Then she said softly, "You think money can fix everything, don't you?" He frowned. "I don't mean it that way. I know what you mean." She looked up then, eyes steady and kind. "You want to make things right. But not everything broken needs gold. Sometimes it just needs time. And presence." Her words disarmed him. All his life, he'd solved problems with cash, cattle herds, oil wells, investments. But here, in this small, quiet kitchen, none of that seemed to matter. You could have left them.